Hi, I'm Tyler Harry, and I will be debating the controversy surrounding Caucasian Americans' position in hip hop. Hip hop is one of America's most favorite and popular music preferences. It's one of the top, above with rock and roll and country, and other forms of pop. It's one of the most popular. According to A&E television networks, the founding father of hip hop is credited to an African American male by the name DJ Kool Herc. And Kool Herc stumbled upon the unique musical style in 1973 during a birthday party in the Bronx, New York City neighborhood. But little did he know, his invention that day in 1973 um, would influence numerous African American hip hop artists to come, which a few include Andre Ramel Young, also known as Dr. Dre, Cortazar Calvin Broadus Jr., also known by his stage name Snoop Dogg, along with Artiste Leon Ivy Jr., which is also he's also known by his alias Coolio. And these African American hip hop artists usually were pretty popular in the late '80s and the '90s era of hip hop music. And while these artists will always be known for their rhymes, and their lyrics, the underlying message of their lyrics and the words spoken during their songs is the most important. Considering the three previously mentioned, Young, Broadus Jr., and Ivy Jr., all grew up facing pretty troublesome childhoods and upbringings, um, including hardship, poverty, drug addiction, broken homes, um, not pretty negative environments, and these upbringings have led to the lyrics of their songs. They virtually use the lyrics of their songs to express their opinions and their anger, resentment, um, and they're kind of bitter about how were brought up. They have every right to be. Um, so therefore, it is rational to apply that these African American artists use life experiences and express them through the lyrics of their music. Um, it wasn't just a fun hobby pastime for these artists because they ultimately used hip hop as a way to start a new life, to build a better life for themselves. Now that we have detected, obviously, that anger, resentment, emotion, rebellion are major parts of the African American hip hop culture and their lyrics. A transition has raised many questions and kind of definitely a controversy in the hip hop world. And of course, that is the rise of the white rapper. And upon that note, even though DJ Kool Herc served as a trailblazer ultimately for the African American culture and hip hop, Caucasian Americans and the Wise of the White Rapper had one as well. He's considered a music pioneer or a trailblazer, if you will. And according to Viacom International Inc., the first white rapper is the title given to Caucasian American male by the name Lee DJ Flash Johnson, in which Johnson was signed to his first record deal in 1981, which sparked an even greater, interest for Caucasian Americans at that time, because prior to that, it was considered almost a comical display or a joke or ludicrous in the 1980s, prior to the 1980s, of a white rapper or Caucasian American performing hip hop. So following Johnson's spark and Johnson's start of a new movement, um, several Caucasian American males began to perform hip hop ultimately because they found a loving and interest in the genre. Listing a few of these individuals, they include Asher Roth, Malcolm James McCormick, also known as Mac Miller, along with Gerald Arlen Gillum, also known by his alias G-Eazy. And even though these artists continue to gain popularity for their whimsical rhymes, along with meaning and motivation of their lyrics in their songs, as far as that goes, it is slightly different than that of African American hip hop because, like highlighting these previous artists mentioned, they mainly focus on political humor, comedy, crude humor, and fun. You know, their music is mainly based on mischief, unlike the African American hip hop, which had focused on life experiences. But an example to show the difference between the two. As ContactMusic.com states, Asher and his friends would perform rap battles for fun. So this here is providing evidence that he didn't have to rap or perform hip hop to make a better life for himself. You know, he did it for fun and for a fun pastime. So therefore, they absolutely didn't have to resort to hip hop. They simply chose to. Also, on a side note, Roth and Gillum have actually attended college previously. One will find college education is not that prominent in the African American culture, or let alone of the three previous African American hip hop artists, other than one. And upon that, it wasn't a completed degree. Let's see. Furthermore, Roth, Gillum, and McCormick's music lack expression of hardship, poverty, and addiction because these weren't a burden for these artists. They the lack thereof didn't give them the feel or desire to include that in their hip hop or their songs and lyrics because if it didn't happen to you, basically, then you can't really write about it or sing about it for that matter. Okay, so here is the main controversy, and that is the view of certain individuals of the African American community, which state, how can a white man perform a black man's music? Ultimately, as it is a Banjoko, which is known as the Bishop of Hip Hop, states, before any of you were writing about or participating in it, we, the black African masses, created it. May I remind the writer that the godfathers of hip hop were African American. Also adding to Banjoko's argument, an African American registry states, to some blacks, white listeners appear to be seeking thrills from racially motivated fantasies. So, in a sense, they were using hip hop as, from the African American viewpoint, Caucasian Americans use hip hop as a form of mockery or, not intended, in the way not intended to be performed, of how African Americans had originally created to symbolize, Now, taking into account these are merely the opinions of a few, African American population. The questions of do these arguments hold validity? Do Caucasian Americans belong in the hip hop world? And how do Caucasian Americans, especially these previous Caucasian American artists, how do they interpret these accusations? starting with the cross-examination and rebuttal. Adisa Banjoko, the bishop of hip hop, states, "Our pain, black pain, and struggle, our music is soulful expression from our hearts." Okay, which is true. Ultimately, the African American community does receive credit for creating hip hop, because that is their form, their style of music they have chosen to elect to perform. But struggle is struggle, regardless of the color of one's skin. Struggle doesn't have a color. African, Asian, Caucasian, Latin Americans all have some form of struggle. Continuing on, hip hop is black man's music and is intended to describe the hardship faced by African Americans. Yes. Ultimately, hip hop was founded by African Americans, as previously mentioned, and initially expressed the life experience of a typical African American individual. However, from the Caucasian standpoint, you have Marshall Bruce Mathers III, also known as his alias Eminem. And now Eminem grew up in Detroit, and he struggled greatly with hardship and poverty, and also a mother that was addicted to alcohol and had a struggle with drug addiction, along with a father who abandoned Eminem, Marshall, and their family at an early age when Marshall was, barely over a toddler's age level. So he expresses his viewpoints regarding this outlook, his outlook on the previous events that occurred to him through his music, which is in comparison and similar to those of the African American culture and hip hop. It's very, very similar because, he can relate to where the previous individuals were stating, he can relate to and feel, as they quote, black pain. Continuing on, quoting Scarface, who is also known as a hip-hop legend, and as Dave Bry states, the face may change in 25 years, hip-hop's going to be white in 25 years. Dave Bry and Caucasian American artist Ben McLemore Haggerty states, often using auto-tune in ways their voices traditional rappers never could. Basically the use of new technology. Basically the use of technology and equipment is allowing new hip-hop artists to perform in a different method, along with be able to modify their voices that traditional rappers couldn't. This technology and equipment wasn't around during the era of DJ Kool Herc or Lee DJ Flash Johnson, for that matter. But for a conclusion, despite the color and ethnicity of a hip-hop artist, or the color of any individual skin for that matter, hip-hop will continue to be one of America's most popular listened to music genres, and is also one of the greatest phenomena in the United States of America that allows two ethnicities to perform beside one another in perfect harmony, if you will. And it's the perfect blend or melting pot of how great our country is and what makes it beautiful ultimately. And it also, it's a fine expression of cultural diversity in the United States. So we look forward to seeing the future of the hip hop music genre, and hopefully, we got some good things to look forward to. So once again, thank you for listening. I'm Tyler Meharry, and have a good day.